Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Shepherd with Ed Guanill. I'm Ed Guanill with Guanill Wealth Management. If you'd like to hear more information about anything we talk about today during the show, feel free to give us a call at 916-359-2750. Again, that's 916-359-2750. And you can always visit us at our website, of course, at edgwealth.com. That's Ed, G as in Ed Guanill, edgwealth.com. Click on the radio page and check out some of the past shows if you like. You can also hear the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music, of course. And so today we're going to be talking a little bit about an article that was put out by U.S. News and World Report titled 7 Things to Know About Withdrawing Money from a Traditional IRA. If you have a traditional IRA, you've probably spent a good amount of time thinking about how to build it up, the contributions you've made, a lot of the investment choices, how much it's grown over time. But there's always the flip side of that conversation that doesn't always get a lot of attention. And that's how and when you actually take money out. Because it turns out that the decisions you make about withdrawals can matter just as much as the decisions you made while you were saving. The timing, the amounts, the sequence, all of it has a potential effect on your tax bill, your Medicare premiums, your Social Security benefits, and ultimately how far your savings could go. So today we're going to walk through these 7 things that everyone with a traditional IRA should understand about withdrawals. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jaclyn, who helps keep the conversation practical and grounded. How are you, Jaclyn?
I'm good, Ed. I feel like I am, it's summertime, it's bright, it's happy, and I'm wearing the color to match it today.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, how are you doing? How is traveling? You went
Good.
to on a vacation recently.
Had a short vacation. It was a lot of fun. I should have worn a little more sunblock, but I'm not complaining. It's good to be back though.
You're talking to the blonde, blue-eyed one. I'm the one that wears the sunblock around here.
Yeah. Well, it was hot. It was fun. We went to Mexico and we just had a great time unwinding. And like I said, it's always good to be home.
Yes. Well, and what were you doing specifically in Mexico?
So I was actually there with our back office team. We take one trip a year where we get together, we get to unwind a little bit, sort of decompress, but also kind of just revitalize ourselves for the rest of the year. It's our halfway mark. We're at the end of the second quarter now. We're pushing into the third quarter. And so now it's time to really start to focus. And this trip actually allows us to get together, share ideas, and sort of refocus. This is the time of year where we start to implement a lot of the tax planning that we do for our clients. So it's good to just sort of reconnect with some people, get some good ideas, and hit the ground running.
Yeah, and you have a team beside you there, but you also got to spend time with other financial professionals and the best of the best around the country. And you guys got together to share those ideas and to talk about your plans for the year. And that's such an amazing quality for you and for your clients, right? So for you to be able to spend time with those people.
Absolutely, because you go through the year working with your clients, and oftentimes it's different things come up that maybe another advisor's had this situation come up, and I can get some ideas and always continue to learn and try to help our clients. Which one of the great things about what we're talking about today is a lot of people are looking to retire, and they're with their IRAs, and they're not really sure how and when they should start withdrawing and what some of those ramifications might be. So this is a timely topic for people who are getting ready to retire.
Yes. Well, let's get into it because I'm excited. I think you brought up a great point about, the IRA withdrawals and how on the savings side, the accumulation, I feel like people typically know what they're doing. They know how to save. They know, I should put this amount in. But then the rules about withdrawals come into play, and it seems to get a little messy and really confusing.
Yeah. So I always say, making money is the easy part. Saving it is the hard part. And when you're working through your career, you're contributing to your 401k plan, and you're watching it grow, the first thing to understand is that, withdrawing too early comes with the cost. So for some people, if they retire before the age of 59 and a half, I don't know how the government came up with this age 59 and a half, right? But if you are having to pull money out before the age of 59 and a half, the IRS imposes a 10% early withdrawal penalty on money that you withdraw from your IRA. So it comes at a cost, right? So every dollar we pull out of our IRAs is going to be taxed at our ordinary income tax rate. And if it's before age 59 and a half, boom, there's another 10% penalty on top of that. So, if you're in a 15% tax bracket, you're going to add a 10% penalty on top of that distribution.
Wow. So yeah, you talk about tax brackets and how does that come into play with, your income? So it's taxed at your income tax bracket, right? And so how does that come into play for when to maybe take it out or how to kind of time it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about timing your withdrawals, there's something that we call sequence of distributions. And basically what sequence of distributions refers to is the order in which you take distributions from your different retirement accounts. So you have your IRAs, you have your Roth IRAs, you maybe have your regular investment portfolios. And it's good to understand that, when that 10% penalty is there for a reason. It's to help people stay disciplined in their retirement and not withdraw too soon. So if you have other resources, understanding your tax bracket is important. Our federal tax bracket is a progressive bracket system, meaning, on the first amount of money you make, you're going to pay 10%. On the second amount of money you're going to make, you're going to pay 12%, and so on, and it goes up. So you may be in a 20% tax bracket, but your effective tax rate overall could be somewhere near 14. And that's important to understand because when you take those early withdrawals, not only do you get that 10% penalty, you may be moving up into the tax bracket. So it's important to understand how all of that works before you take those distributions.
Yeah, well, thank you. That explains it. And I know that we're talking about kind of the minimum age of that 59 and a half. But is there problems if you wait too long?
Sure. Obviously waiting too long can cause other problems because as you get older, there's something else that comes into play. When you turn 73, now you've got to think about those required minimum distributions. And if you've allowed those IRAs to grow and grow and grow, which is ideal, right? We want our money to grow. Then you have those required minimum distributions, which could put you up into the next highest tax bracket potentially. So, the second thing that catches people off guard while taking early withdrawals because they're costly is that everything that comes out, remember, is ordinary income tax. So you want to time those withdrawals for sort of the lower income years when you're in a transition period, possibly. For a lot of people, the early years of retirement represent that exact window. In fact, the article that we're talking about looks at the age between 55 and 65 as kind of the ideal time to start taking those withdrawals because it allows you to sort of reduce the overall RMD impact down the road. And we'll talk a little bit about RMDs here in a bit, but those RMDs can absolutely be a situation where you move up into higher tax brackets later in life, which is the time where you don't want to be in a higher tax bracket.
Yeah, well, Ed, I think this is a good time to maybe go into further depth with the RMDs because, this is the one and only time that, Uncle Sam or the government makes you withdraw money. And why
That's
is
right.
that?
Yeah. So basically, we've been able to contribute to our retirement accounts tax deferred for years and years, meaning we don't have to pay taxes on the money that we're contributing to our 401k plans, our 403bs, TSP plans, or 457s. The money is also allowed to grow tax deferred, meaning we're not paying any capital gains on the growth. In fact, if you're changing your investments inside of your IRAs or your 401ks and 403bs, you're not realizing any capital gains or capital losses. So there's all the taxes being deferred until some point in the future. One of two things will happen. One, you will either start to take withdrawals on your own because you need the money, or number two, you'll reach an age where the IRS says, okay, don't forget about us. We want our tax revenue now. So therefore, you must start taking distributions. That's the required minimum distribution. The RMDs are based on an actuarial life expectancy table, and there's a factor that they use to determine how much you have to take out each year. The older you get, the higher that factor is, and that's important to understand because as you get older, they want you to take out more of that money and pay more taxes along the way. And as your accounts are growing, those RMD amounts could be pretty substantial depending on how well your portfolio is growing.
Yeah, and speaking of RMDs, I know another hot topic that people are talking about is a Roth conversion. And
Yeah,
that's meaning, taking your IRA, your traditional IRA money, and turning it and rolling it over into a Roth. Can you explain that for our listeners and maybe what are the benefits of doing that? And is there a timeline?
sure, sure. So, one of the things that the article points out is that sort of sweet spot 55 to 65. And, I like to think that you have all the way up to your age of RMDs to really think about doing those Roth conversions. So a Roth conversion just means that you're going to take money out of your IRA, you're going to pay taxes on it now, and then you're going to move it into a Roth IRA where it grows tax-free. And then later, you can also withdraw tax-free. But the other attribute to the Roth is that there are no RMD requirements. So if you think about it this way, if I retired at, say, 60, and I'm not required to take an RMD until 73, I have 13 years where I could create a process to convert that traditional IRA over to a Roth IRA. So when I hit the age of 73, I've already dealt with the taxes. And now I have the luxury of allowing that money to grow tax-free for the rest of my life. And I have no more RMD requirement from there forward. The other part to that puzzle is for a lot of people, they want to leave a legacy to their kids and their grandkids. They don't want to burden them with a bunch of taxes. So by having a systematic approach to Roth conversions over a period of time, you could also help reduce or even eliminate the taxation that would come from your kids or grandkids inheriting that traditional IRA.
Oof. Yeah. Well, that's great to know, and that's a great topic to discuss with a financial professional who can help you, navigate that. And I know that there seems to be a lot of maybe penalties in IRA withdrawals. I mean, we talked about the early, right, before 59 and a half and that additional
Right.
10%. But there's also a penalty if you miss an RMD, right?
There is. And they've changed it a bit. It used to be that if I missed my RMD, then I would have to pay a 50% penalty, which basically calculates to, for example, let's say that my RMD amount was $10,000 and I missed it for whatever reason. I just didn't make my RMD that year. The IRS could impose a 50% penalty of the RMD amount. That would be $5,000. That's pretty substantial. They've since lowered it to 25%. Okay, so there's still that penalty if you miss that RMD. So when you start to get close to that age, it's important that you understand when those RMDs have to begin, how much those RMDs are, and to make sure that you have a systematic approach to making sure that RMD comes out every year without failure. For some people, I get this question all the time, Jaclyn, where people say, Ed, I don't need the RMD. I have a pension, I have Social Security. I don't need the money. Can I still convert it? Yeah. I don't really need the money for income, right? So can I still convert my RMD? The answer is no. You cannot convert an RMD to a Roth. Okay. However, there are things you can do to sort of minimize the taxation of the RMD if you don't need the income to live on.
And I know that one of those options might be, for those that are charitably inclined, right? And there's an
Yes.
advantage to that. Can you maybe explain what that is and how, to keep watch of it, or is there a timeline or
Yeah,
age?
absolutely. This is one of the things that we really try to work with our clients on for the tax side of the planning process, which is, if you are charitably inclined, if you feel philanthropic, I always tell people don't donate cash. Okay. Don't donate just money from your regular portfolio. donate the IRA money because that helps to reduce the taxation on your IRAs. That's called a qualified charitable donation. And the way that works is you pick, one or two or three or four or however many charities that you like.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that your RMD for this year was supposed to be $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel charitable. I have 5 charities. I'm going to donate $2,000 each to those 5 charities from my IRA. Now, my RMD is only $20,000 because I've donated $10,000 of that RMD, which I don't have to pay taxes on. So now I'm only paying taxes on the $20,000. I have a client who gives me a list every year. Here's all of my RMDs that I wanted, all of my qualified charitable donations that I want to do this year. And so we go through and we systematically identify those charities. We make those systematic donations and we help to reduce that overall taxation on the RMD that she's supposed to take each year.
Well, that is a great I don't want to say loophole, but it's a great strategy for minimizing that. And also if you are charitable, and charitably inclined, because that's a great feeling to know, like you just said in that situation, maybe you don't want to or need to take your RMDs. And this is a great way to feel good about it and feel good that maybe Uncle Sam isn't getting as much as he wants.
Yeah, and it's it's one of the benefits of being charitable that why not if you're philanthropic and you're able to give money back to certain charities, there's no reason why you shouldn't get a nice tax deduction for it. So it's one of those things that you can take advantage of that I think a lot of people may not know about, but we try to educate our clients and let them know that there are options there to help reduce that taxation.
Yeah. So I want to touch on, some other aspects to what your IRA withdrawals can affect. And one of those is Medicare. And
Yes.
how does it do that?
Yes. So that's important. Medicare, we all pay, well, when you turn 65, you're eligible for Medicare, you're paying your Medicare premiums.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how much income you have, there's something called IRMA, which stands for Income Related Monthly Adjusted Amount. And what that refers to is for your Part B Medicare. The more money you make, the higher those premiums will go up. So in 2026, the standard Part B premium is about $202, $203 per month. But if your modified adjusted gross income, your MAGI, M-A-G-I, if that exceeds $109,000 as an individual or $218,000 for a married couple filing joint, you're going to pay more. Your premiums could go up as much as, from 202 to as much as 284. And depending on how high your income is, your Medicare premiums could actually reach as much as $690 per month. And that's a very, very wide spread, right? A large IRA withdrawal in any given year could push someone higher up into that IRMA tier. And, what happens is for IRMA, Medicare looks back 2 years. So, for example, the income that you earn in 2026 will determine your Medicare premiums for 2028. So you have to be cautious of those distributions, your RMDs, and any other money that you're pulling out. I have clients who have pushed themselves up into the IRMA brackets unintentionally because, they've helped their son or their daughter buy a house and they've used IRA money for that. So those types of things all come into play, and it's really important.
Yeah. And it's not immediate. It's 2 years down the road.
That's right.
And Ed, what about Social Security? I know that that's another hot topic, especially at this age, and what you can get, or how does it get affected?
Yeah, so Social Security is one of those things that many people rely on as sort of their main source of income. In 1935, FDR passed the Social Security Act, and he said, "You will never pay taxes on Social Security as long as I'm alive." Well, we know how that story ends. FDR passed away. And then in 1983, they created income limits. And this was under the Reagan administration. So if you were single and you had an income of $25,000 or more, then 50% of your Social Security income is now taxable. If you were married and you had $34,000 a year or more, then as a married couple, that would put you to that 50% tax bracket, or 50% of your benefit would be taxable. Then in 1983, they created new brackets. I'm sorry, 1993. In 1993, they created a whole other set of brackets, which created your benefit would now be 85% of it would be taxable. So if you were single earning $32,000 a year or married earning $44,000 a year, then 85% of your benefit is now taxable. And here's the problem with that. The more income that you have, the more of your Social Security becomes taxable. And the challenge is these numbers have not been adjusted for inflation. So to think about a couple earning $44,000 a year, that's pretty easy to reach these days. And so most people are paying taxes on their Social Security at about 85% of their benefit. So the more income you have, Medicare, IRA premiums, and then also your Social Security taxation becomes impacted as well.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. There's a lot of different variables. I do just want to touch on maybe there's some, I don't know, exceptions to
Yeah.
all these rules. I mean, what do you have to what are there for exceptions?
Yeah. So the article lists a lot of different exceptions to taking money out of an IRA early. Okay. So we're kind of going back to where we started this whole conversation with the early withdrawals. And there are some things where people can pull money out. I think the one that's most commonly used, this one exception, is for the first-time home purchase. For a couple single person that has an IRA 401k, they can pull up to $10,000 penalty-free for a qualified first-time home purchase. That can help with the down payment. The other exceptions include things like permanent disability that leaves you unable to work, maybe a terminal illness diagnosis, unreimbursed medical expenses, higher education expenses, health insurance premiums that you have to pay when you're unemployed, and a qualified birth or adoption expense up to about $5,000. So there are some exceptions in there. It's just important to know, what life situation you're facing today, where maybe that exception could come into play to help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we touched on a lot today with IRA withdrawals. Are there anything else that you want to share before we kind of end today's episode?
Well, I think, I'll just take a minute to talk again about these early withdrawals, because sometimes people have the opportunity to retire a little bit early. And so let's say they retire at 55 and they still have to pull money from their IRA, but they don't want to pay the 10% penalty. There's another exception. It's a rule from IRS, and it's called IRS Rule 72T, which allows you to take early withdrawals without paying taxes, or without paying the penalty. I wish I could make taxes go away. Jaclyn, I'm still working on trying to make taxes go away for everybody, but we could get rid of that early withdrawal penalty. And I think that's important. So under a 72T distribution, there's some rules that go along. It's, before age 59 and a half, you have to take equal payments over a 5-year period, or until you turn 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So there's a few different attributes to the 72T distribution, but I think the important thing to know is that if you retire early and you have to withdraw money from your IRA, that there are ways to do that and avoid that 10% penalty. And I've written white papers on the 72T distribution because it's one of those unknown rules that can really help a lot of people that have the opportunity to retire early.
Yeah, I'm glad that you highlighted that. Thank you. And I think overall, the theme that I'm getting here today, Ed, from you is timing and age, and it really all matters.
It does. It really does. And, having those options available, and understanding, how to create that sequence of distributions that we spoke about earlier, it's important. It's one of those things that you should be having that conversation with your advisor. And so, if you have any questions, you've listened to the show today, feel free to reach out and give us a call at 916-359-2750. Again, that's 916-359-2750. Or you can always send me an email directly. My email is ed@edgwealth.com. And you can always visit the resource section of our website at edgwealth.com.
Well, thank you, Ed. And I'm so glad that we talked about this today. And I just want to reiterate the importance of talking with a financial professional because there's a lot of timing things that go into it. And there's a lot of details that, truthfully, you need a guide. It's important to have a guide to help you along the way. There's a lot of different variables that we discussed.
Absolutely. So great talking with you. I look forward to seeing you next week and hope everybody will join us again.
Well, perfect. That does it for this episode of The Wealth Shepherd with our host, Ed Guanill.
Thank you.